Good evening and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this Monday, December 12, 2011 broadcast of the Infowars Nightly News. I'm Aaron Dykes. Now, coming up in this broadcast, we have a very special interview with pharmacist Ben Fuchs. He's going to give you a wealth of information on nutrition and vitamin supplements and how you can improve your health. It's such an extended interview. We have a part two also coming up later this week. But first, in the news, it has come to the surface that the very controversial National Defense Authorization Act is even worse because of who was behind the terrible language in the bill, which was written by Carl Levin, senator, as well as John McCain, senator. The Obama administration demanded power to indefinitely detain U.S. citizens. It was the White House who removed language that would have protected Americans from Section 1031 of the NDAA bill. Section 1031 of the NDAA bill, which itself defines the entirety of the United States as a battlefield, allows American citizens to be snatched from the streets, carted off to a foreign detention camp, and held indefinitely without trial. The bill states that any person who has committed a belligerent act faces indefinite detention, but no trial or evidence has to be presented. The White House merely needs to make the accusation totally in violation of due process and everything in the Bill of Rights. The article goes on to discuss how it was the administration that asked us to remove the very language which we had in the bill, which passed the committee. We removed it at the request of the administration. That's Senator Carl Levin talking, and now we have a video clip of him saying the same.
And I'm wondering whether the senator is familiar with the fact that the language which precluded the application of Section 1031 to American citizens was in the bill that we originally approved in the Armed Services Committee, and the administration asked us to remove the language which says that U.S. citizens and lawful residents would not be subject to this section. Is the senator familiar with the fact that it was the administration that asked us to remove the very language which we had in the bill which passed the committee, and that we removed it at the request of the administration that would have said that this determination would not apply to U.S. citizens and lawful residents? I'm just wondering, is the senator familiar with the fact that it was the administration which asked us to remove the very language, the absence of which is now objected to by the senator from Illinois?
I'm familiar now because the senator from Michigan has shared that fact with me.
And so again, that's legislation that would have, at least in the language, protected American citizens from this indefinite detention. And Levin says it was the White House who asked him to remove it. This is a part of a larger problem because so much of the secret junk that goes on is cloaked under national security, which is all part of the executive branch overreach. It's been going on through many presidents, George W. Bush, chief among them. Obama's a big part of that problem as well. I wanted to read this paragraph. The Obama administration never had a problem with Section 1031 of the bill and indeed acted to ensure it applied to American citizens. Doubts over whether or not Obama would veto the bill only arose out of issues with Section 1032, not the same section, which pertains to the military being required to take custody of individuals. So if Obama vetoes the very large NDAA National Defense Authorization package, it may well be because of the issue with Section 1032 and not with Section 1031, the controversial section talking about indefinite detention of Americans. So we're going to look out for a possible stunt, a switcheroo, making your cake and eating it too, having your cake, eating it too. Something to watch. In other terrible news, the internet piracy bill, a freedoms of speech kill switch, that's in the Hill today. They talk about how the U.S. Justice Department, under the Stop Online Piracy Act, could shut down any internet site it doesn't like on nothing more than a whim. Under the so-called Stop Online Piracy Act, SOPA, the federal government, which is prohibited constitutionally from abridging free speech or depriving its citizens of their property without due process, would engage in both practices on an unprecedented scale. In establishing the precursor to a taxpayer-funded thought police, it would dramatically curtail technology investment and innovation, wreaking havoc on our economy, and goes on to talk about how any accuser or competitor needs to do in order to obtain an injunction relief is point the finger at a website. And obviously they can use this to selectively shut down almost anything. They also reported on it here in the Washington Post in the article Overkill on Internet Piracy. Of course, Infowars has been warning about the internet kill switch bills that the Senate and others have tried to introduce for years. Paul Joseph Watson wrote the Senate to sneak through internet kill switch bill back in August 26th of 2010. He also wrote about it in June 25th of 2010. Obama could shut down internet for 4 months under new emergency powers. New bill gives Obama kill switch to shut down the internet. That's Paul Joseph Watson in June of 2010 also. And a whole lot more. The point is they're going to use these claims of copyright infringement to protect the music and movie industries and the rest of it to shut down what ultimately will amount to, and I assure you of this, political speech. This website's under threat. Every website, especially where it values freedom, is completely under threat by this awful legislation. Now, you heard about the EAS emergency alerts. The government did a test on TV and radio last month in October. They also announced they want to soon do them on internet and cell phones. Verizon was the first cell phone network to sign up for that. And here it is, unannounced Verizon emergency alert causes panic in New Jersey. An unannounced test of soon-to-be mandatory emergency alert system caused panic in New Jersey after Verizon customers received text messages warning them that a civil emergency was in progress and to take shelter, prompting alarm and a flood of 911 calls. And it goes on to discuss all the chaos from there. It was almost certainly a government message. In fact, the exact wording that Verizon cell phone customers received was civil emergency in this area until 1:24 Eastern. Take shelter now, U.S. govern. Reason for alert indeed. And the point is they're going to take over all means of communication, including the more recent types, cell phone and internet communication, with their emergency alerts, which have other reasons as well. Now, Paul Joseph Watson has also written on the report that says Iran is about to practice closing the Strait of Hormuz. They're going to do a drill to close the key choke point that would send oil prices skyrocketing to $300 to $500 a barrel. More reason to think that a wider war could be beginning. Kurt Nimmo reports on whistleblower activist Sybil Edmonds' warning that foreign military groups are amassing on the Jordan side of the Syrian border. U.S. NATO troops reported on Jordan's border with Syria. Of course, that country is under target as well. There's a covert war going on there, as well as in the wider part of the Middle East. We'll keep an eye on the geopolitical situation in the days to come. Meanwhile, Holder has essentially admitted that the Justice Department lied to Congress, said his little reasons about it's only a state of mind. Now they're discussing in the Daily Caller how Holder may be holding on to private emails about Fast and Furious. A largely overlooked exchange from Thursday's House Judiciary Committee includes what appears to be an admission from Attorney General Eric Holder that emails to and from him about Operation Fast and Furious may exist and that he's refusing to provide them to Congress. Just more reason he should be further questioned, fired, and probably prosecuted. Meanwhile, Attorney General Eric Holder's coming here to Austin, Texas, where we broadcast from, and Kurt Nimmo has written an article urging people to protest his appearance at the LBJ Library in Austin at their main auditorium there. Holds several thousand. It's apparently by invitation only. And he cites how Holder had a significant role in the Waco siege, in the bombing of the Oklahoma City building, and all the rest of it, all the nasty stuff he's been involved in. That's right, it's not just Fast and Furious. These criminals have a total track record, and that's why they're tapped time and again for government. That article, of course, up on Infowars.com if you're in the Austin area and want to show Holder what you think, peaceably, of course. And they will try to frame you and arrest you. We've all been through that as well. TSA recruiting junior officers at airports. At any rate, they have a fake TSA badge that says junior officer that they're giving out to kids. We got this tip from one of our great readers. And remember when you were growing up and wanted to be a police officer, firefighter, or public servant? Now the TSA appears to be tapping children for future recruits. Not only are young, impressionable flyers indoctrinated by the unconstitutional checkpoints themselves, but now by a subtle driver to join the team when they could someday get the power to conduct their own pat-downs and body scans. Just crazy what this world is coming to. Now, on the climate gate front, we've covered the meeting in South Africa, in Durban, where they're trying to set up essentially a climate debt system. Now, Mark Morano, we've had him on the program from Climate Depot, writes that the South African activist has slammed the UN's Green Climate Fund as government-to-government aid is a reward for being better than anyone else and at causing poverty. It enriches the people who cause poverty. And he cites an activist by the name of Leon Liu, who said the UN Climate Fund will wreak havoc on the developing world's poor. Liu explained, the money goes to government, and governments spend it on, of course, themselves, meaning various government projects creating bigger departments, bigger bureaucracies. It's called big bureaucratic capture. They build empires, they build conference centers, and they buy political support. They go and distribute the money to communities where they want support and votes. Not only is the whole climate change issue a concocted fraud for greater world government control, but of course it's a fraud anyway for bureaucracy, for bad spending, all the stuff everyone's so upset about. Obviously, if they create a giant fund, they're just going to embezzle it and misappropriate it and so forth. But of course, the real reason we cover this story, awesome footage of leading Climate Gate critic Lord Monckton arriving at the South Durban Conference via parachute. Isn't this great? How old is he again? I forget. He's up there in age, though, and there he is having the time of his life and going to fight tyranny. Good for Lord Monckton. Really interesting guy to meet as well. Durban Jump for Climate Truth. There he is with a tandem instructor, I would imagine, landing near the site of the conference where all the climate change people bring in their propaganda. So why shouldn't Monckton make a spectacle for truth? Yeah, pretty neat. In other news, Rand Paul is now criticizing the leading, or what the media tells us are the leading GOP potential nominees, Gingrich and Romney, saying they're not conservative. Of course, Rand Paul's father, Ron Paul, who's running for the nomination, is conservative. He slammed Romney, saying he had defended bailouts as necessary to keep the entire currency of the country worth something. My experience tells me that if we were on the precipice, we could have had a complete meltdown of our entire financial system, wiping out all the savings of the American people, so action had to be taken. No talk about reining in the Federal Reserve or the real causes of the bailouts or the inherent problem with giving money to the people who acted inappropriately. Meanwhile, current, quote, frontrunner Newt Gingrich claims to have changed his mind on TARP after having his ear bent by a number of, quote, very right-wing businessmen. Those unnamed advisors convinced Gingrich that the financial meltdown was a true crisis and the bailouts were necessary to prevent the financial system from suffering a heart attack. If nothing else, even if they're not conservative, there's certainly sellouts who will blow in the wind any which way the lobbyist money sends them. In Latvia, a country that's had a lot of issues, the largest bank fights off a depositor run after rumors of imminent collapse. It nationalized last month after regulators discovered evidence of massive fraud allegedly carried out by the bank's former owner. Depositors were deprived of access to their funds for days. We've seen this here in the United States with people who had their money in MF Global. Of course, it's happening worldwide, and I'm sure this is just the beginning. Of course, Latvia always has had problems, as I mentioned, but Norway, traditionally a very rich country, however, its butter shortage threatens Christmas treats, reads the headline in the AFP. An acute butter shortage in Norway, one of the world's richest countries, has left people worrying how to bake their Christmas goodies with store shelves emptied and prices through the roof. Now, this is just an example of what happens when there is a food shortage crisis. The price of a pound of butter went up to 350 euros, which is more than $460 US, and people were bidding on it on the black and gray markets as well. Just something to keep in mind as the crisis exacerbates. Meanwhile, the Washington Post reports in its Wonk Book blog that the real unemployment rate is 11%. And they go on to give their reasons that since 2007, the percent of the population that either has a job or is actively looking for one has fallen